One of the fastest ways to make money from property is to buy a discounted property or below market value. And one of the best ways to accelerate and multiply those results is through splitting titles. If you're watching my videos for the first time, my name is Saj Hussain, and on this channel I share with you my 15 years of property investing experience to ultimately help you get further faster in your own property investing journey. When it comes to splitting titles in property, essentially what we're doing is bulk buying, then breaking it down to individual components to maximize its value. So for instance, let's say we were taking a building that say had 5 apartments in it, and we were going to purchase that building for £400,000. And it may be that those individual apartments are worth say £100,000 each. That means if we sold them off individually, that would net us £500,000, giving us an instant £100,000 profit. Essentially what we're doing is bulk buying, breaking down to individual components to extract that hidden value. If it's that easy, I hear you ask, then why isn't the seller just going to do this anyway? Why would they let you do this and make the profit? Well, there's many reasons that be the case. Often it's a case of that the seller doesn't really understand how to do this because there's a process involved, and other times they might know it's possible, but they don't necessarily want to go through all the hassle in doing it because there is hassle in doing this, but that's how you make a profit. There will also be situations where someone converted a building many years ago and they may not have converted it legally, essentially what we call an illegal flat conversion, and now they're just looking to exit, they want to get out, and they just don't want to go through all the hassle and the rigmarole to try and rectify all the issues that they've created over time, which many times can be fixed, but it's really about knowing how to do it. And this is why you want to be doing this, because essentially you're getting more than you're paying for at the point of purchase. And the reason why this strategy works so well is that there's so few people doing it and very few understand how to really extract the value. So when you think of a general single family house or an apartment, there's many people that will be happy to purchase that property, put it in their portfolio as a buy-to-let property. However, when it comes to buying a bulk of properties, that might be 5 apartments, 10 apartments, a mixed unit of say 20 units, there's a much smaller market and very few buyers that are able to or even want to buy those type of properties. Hence the prices tend to be lower because the market is much smaller. Why is now the best time to be doing this strategy? And the reason for this is that many years ago, 20, 30, even 40 years ago, there were landlords at that time that were taking larger properties, converting them into smaller apartments. And you might come across some of these for sale sometimes where you've got 5, 6, 7, even more apartments in what was traditionally a large family house. But what they did at that time is not necessarily convert them legally, as I mentioned earlier on, but now when they're coming to sell and exit those, they just want to get out the market because let's face it, lettings is much more challenging than it was a number of years ago. There are still some landlords that I bump into that barely know that they need to do a gas certificate, never mind that the fact there's probably 200 bits of law that you need to comply with when you're letting property. The vast majority don't necessarily know this, and as they're realizing that they're really out of date in terms of what they need to be doing when it comes to selling property and they've really had enough, they've had a good run, they just want to get out. So now is the perfect time to be picking up these properties that were converted 20, 30, 40 years ago. Sounds great, but how do we actually do this? Well, firstly, it's important to understand this doesn't just apply to apartments in old houses, which is what we've been talking about now. This could be mixed-use buildings, for example, shops and offices and apartments, all in one building. It could be a mixture of garages, workshops. It could be just a multiple of different types of building. The key thing is it's a number of different properties pulled together into one particular transaction. And of course, this also could be land transactions where you've got a large portion of land that's been sliced off into smaller pieces. And I'll give you an example of that towards the end that I've done. Secondly, there are 2 key ways to do this. You essentially bulk buy, then you split up the properties, then you either exit by selling or refinancing, i.e. remortgaging and keeping them in your portfolio by extracting the value that way. The second way to do this is you bulk buy, but then you add value to the property first by, for example, improving it, renovating it, refurbishing it before you go to the exit of refinancing or selling to extract your profit. Hey, if you're enjoying this content, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, but make sure you subscribe to the channel and also click on the like button. And what that does, it just helps us reach more people. But I also want to take the opportunity to say a big thank you so much because we recently hit 20,000 subscribers on the channel. Now, I can't even visualize what 20,000 people looks like, and I just want to say I'm so grateful for you watching the channel and sharing it with people that you know will also benefit. Let's look at an example of how this works just to give you some context, and let's do it on the screen over here. This is a property that went to auction recently, which is a perfect example that we can use when it comes to splitting titles. So this is a block of 12 units that went to auction very recently, and it's 6 commercial units and 6 residential units. What that actually means is, so we've got 6 flats above the shops and we've got 6 shops underneath, with the total rent coming in once it's fully occupied, because initially it was listed as 2 empty apartments, once it's fully occupied, generating £56,590 a year. And if it was to sell for the guide price of between 480 and 530,000, let's say it sells at 530,000, that represents a gross yield of 10.68%. Not bad. So on the face of it, it looks quite attractive. In fact, it actually sold for £580,000, which means it represents a gross yield of 9.76%. So still a decent investment, but not necessarily the kind of property that everybody would want. How can we make it even better? So if we look at these numbers, if it sold for £580,000 and we've got 12 units, that means each unit is roughly £48,000. Now I'm making some assumptions here, but if you break it down to each individual component, that means paying £48,000 for each one of those units. However, if we do some research online, say for a 1-bedroom apartment in that area, what we find is the value is typically about £70,000 for these apartments in a similar condition. Now, if we had 12 of those, as we have here, that would mean individually what they're worth is £840,000. That's quite a jump between the £580,000 they've paid and the £840,000 value. So what does that actually mean? Well, what it means is at the auction, the most that was possible to achieve there on the day was £580,000, is the most anybody was prepared to pay for those 12 units. But if you broke them up individually, their value would come to £840,000. So what are the options? Well, you can take the £840,000 value by selling them off individually, and if you look at what they're paid, £580,000, that would mean you're left with a profit of £260,000. Let's say you decided not to sell them, and this is where the magic really happens. So each one of those units, we're saying the individual value is £70,000. So we still need to split them up. We still need to do the title split, which is the legal work on creating 12 separate units. So each one has a different title deed at land registry. They're now 12 separate properties as opposed to the one block of 12, which is what it was originally. Now, if we borrow 75% as a mortgage against each one of those 12 units, our new total debt will be £630,000. So that means we've now borrowed £630,000 from the bank across 12 mortgages, which gives us this total figure. But what was paid for the property in the first place was £580,000. So at auction it sold for £580,000. You split the titles into the 12 units, the individual values are significantly higher at £840,000. You borrow 75% of that figure, which gives you the £630,000 from the bank, and effectively you've got all your money out and none of your money left in the deal. You'll have some costs involved, such as the legals and there'll be other transactional costs involved, but pretty much if you look at what we're talking about here, it means you are getting all of your money out of quite a significant deal. And here's the thing, you've got all your money out, but you're still collecting rent from the properties. So here's the thing, you could have done this using none of your own money. It could be an investor money that you borrowed, it could be a joint venture partners funded deal, or it could even be traditional bridging finance that you borrowed to do this. Yes, you've got some costs involved, but if you look at a deal like this, you pretty much own 12 properties with none of your money in them and you've got an income going. But here's the thing, this is just a basic strategy. You can advance this even further by these properties. If you are doing some light renovation on them, let's say you're spending £10,000 or £15,000 on each one of those units to make them much nicer, you could probably lift the value to maybe £90,000 or maybe even £95,000. So it makes that end value even higher. So that means not only can you get all your money out that you initially put in, you could probably even take out more to be able to go and buy other properties. Now, sometimes people think these are more advanced strategies for much more experienced people. And yes, you need more knowledge and support around you so you don't make mistakes, because there's many pitfalls that are in a strategy like this. However, this is a fast way to accelerate the results of buying property cheap as opposed to doing it one at a time. Let me now show you an example of how I've done this with land as opposed to existing built properties. So we purchased a site that had one house on it here and on quite a large plot. And this was acquired as a purchase, but then what we did, we split this property up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 titles. So the land was split up into 5 segments from the one it was originally. So there's one house that was built there, this existing house that was improved there, a new one built there, a new one built here, and this was the private road that accessed these properties. So when these properties are sold off, they're sold up as 4 separate titles. Each owner has their own title, and then they have a share and an interest in this private road here, which all of them benefit from. If you want to learn more about this specific project, then we'll link up a video up here for you to be able to watch where I talk about this deal in more detail. This title splitting strategy, I tend to put it in a little box called creative deals. And one of the reasons I really like creative deals is when I started my property investing journey right at the beginning, one of the things I struggled with is trying to get moving forward. I thought I needed lots of money, lots of deals, but actually by understanding how to do creative deals, it means you can structure things in a certain way that can benefit a seller, that can benefit an owner. It's no longer about how deep your pockets are or how much money you can access to structure deals like this. Now, if you want to learn more about these deals, I'll be putting a training program on very soon, specifically around creative strategies, and this will be one of many types of strategies that we use under the terms of creative transactions, which is really about how you understand how to do these deals as opposed to how much money have you got. And if you want to learn more about the training program, just ping me a message on either Facebook, LinkedIn or Instagram and we'll get back in touch with you. And if you've enjoyed this content, then YouTube tells me you are really going to like the video that we've got lined up next for you just over here. But just before you go and watch that, make sure if you haven't already, click on my face down here to subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you on this video up here.